Welcome to my house. Welcome to the Structure Talk podcast, a production of Structure Tech Home Inspections. My name is Reuben Saltzman. I'm your host, alongside building science geek Tessa Murry. We help home inspectors up their game through education, and we help homeowners to be better stewards of their houses. We've been keeping it real on this podcast since 2019, and we are also the #1 home inspection podcast in the world, according to my mom. Welcome back to the show. Tessa, this is the quickest start we have ever had to a podcast, I think. We have had guests for like the last 3 months, it feels like.
Yeah.
And every time we have a guest, it's a lot of, all right, is the mic working? Is the camera working? Here's the rules. Here's how it works. Don't log off right away. It's all this preamble for 10 to 15 minutes. Here I just logged on. I said, should we go? Yeah, let's go. All right.
Let's do it. Let's dive into it. We did have a little pre phone call so that we could get on the same page. So at least we know what we're talking about, right?
Yeah. Well, but before we get into the topic today, and you know, the topic is going to be how much is too much to report on. What's the right level of reporting? What's too much? What's not enough? From a home inspection perspective, I'm excited to talk about this, but before we get into it, just a couple little things. You know, normally when we get the guests on, we don't do a whole lot of chit chat because we want to give that time to our guests. But a couple little things going on. Number one, I just did a review of a infrared camera. This company sent me to test out. I had tested out one of their cameras. I think I tested out one of their cameras about a year ago. It was called the infrared something or another. I don't remember. But the same guy, he said, hey, I'm working with this company now. And I'm wondering if you could test out this infrared camera. It's called the Thermal Master P2. And it's called the world's second smallest infrared camera. And the one that I had previously reviewed was the world's smallest infrared camera. So, and they run off the exact same software. So they surely know each other, but it's not the same name.
Is this a handheld device or something you plug into your phone?
You plug it into your phone. And if you want to check it out, just go to the website and go to the blog on our website. And by the time this podcast airs, the blog review will probably be about 2 to 3, maybe even 4 weeks old. And it's called the Thermal Master P2 Crazy Awesome Infrared Camera for $179. Something like that. And I mean, it's tiny.
You're holding it up to the camera for all of our listeners, and it is so small. It looks like it's a tiny little rectangle, but it's like the size of a quarter almost.
Yeah. It's about the size of a quarter.
Or like an SD card. Do people remember SD cards?
Yes, those are still a thing, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I think some cameras still take an SD card. Yeah, it's about the thickness of about 4 SD cards stacked on top of each other.
Oh my gosh.
Just tiny. And so
incredible.
It plugs right into your mobile device. And this thing kind of knocked my socks off. I was super impressed with it. It retails for $249, but right now they've got this coupon for $50 off. I hope the coupon is still applicable by the time this podcast airs.
Yeah.
But they got a $50 off instant coupon on Amazon. And then there's this other discount code they gave me. It's Master P2. You enter that at Amazon checkout to take another $20 off or so, bringing the price down to like $179.08. And the resolution on this, I mean, I did side-to-side comparisons with the FLIR E6, which has kind of been our workhorse at Structure Tech. That's a standalone gun style infrared camera. And I did side-by-side image comparisons, and this thing kicks butt. It's way better than the FLIR E6.
You're kidding. Oh my gosh.
It has higher thermal sensitivity, which is the ability to distinguish between subtle temperature differences. and it has better resolution. The resolution is 192 by 256. And they advertise it as actually twice that, like 384 by 512. And they say that it's some type of software conversion that upscales it or something. Whatever it is, it's super impressive, super handy for diagnosing problems.
Yeah.
And, it's not something that I would use as a home inspector, because I like to have a standalone device. I don't like something plugged into my phone where, I might drop it or something. But I think it's handy for any home inspector to have if their camera conks out or their batteries die or it breaks or they lose it or whatever. If you want a backup, it's a crazy good backup camera for $180. So if you're in the market for an infrared camera, you want to test it out, you need a backup, something like that, strongly recommend this little guy. I do not get endorsed by them. I don't get any kickbacks, nothing like that. So I'm not,
after
I'm
this, you should.
I should. I absolutely should. Well, it's not entirely true. If you use the Amazon link on my blog, I get a little kickback from Amazon. I mean, any Amazon links I post, I get a little something, maybe like 1%. It's not much.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I just to say, I'm not like getting some $50 commission if you buy one of these cameras. I'm just mentioning it because I think it's an awesome product.
Well, I cannot believe how far technology has come. Like, I remember using infrared cameras back in the day, like, doing weatherization stuff. And I mean, they were clunky, they were heavy, they take forever to turn on and warm up and calibrate. And a lot of times the software had glitches and and they cost thousands of dollars. And here you are.
Focus them.
Remember, you had to manually focus the cameras? Had to twist it to focus it.
Yes.
And now here you are holding up this little tiny device that could just fit in your back pocket. You could easily lose it. And it's $179. And the image is just as good or better as some of these bigger cameras. So that just blows my mind.
And now the downside, Tess?
Yeah.
It is not yet available for iPhones.
I knew it was too good to be true.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. It's only available for Android devices right now. They said they're going to be coming out with a version for iPhone very soon, but he didn't say when.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's next. That'll be next.
Yep. I hope so. My dog is going nuts.
Hey, Sarge.
What are we going to do? Yeah. All right.
We haven't heard him on the podcast in a while. It's good. Yeah, good to know he's still there.
He's making an appearance because the UPS guy's here, so he's going nuts. Don't mind him.
Nice. Well, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, so had to share that. Tessa, what's new in your world? How is your business going? You got any great stories to share?
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I've been doing more client, just kind of one-on-ones with homeowners. And it's, there's such a need for, I think, people that just have a general understanding of all the different systems of a house. And I think home inspectors kind of get this because, you have to know about roofing and siding and plumbing and electrical and HVAC and all that to be able to evaluate the house. But what I'm doing is just kind of coming in and helping homeowners navigate kind of all the different things that are going on and help them prioritize maintenance and repairs and upgrades and giving them just kind of this unbiased opinion, because a lot of times they have like one issue going on and they'll have someone who just kind of focuses on that issue come in and give them their opinion. And sometimes they'll have 3 different opinions from 3 different people on that one system, but no one else is looking at all the other things going on too.
Yeah.
There might be more important things. So it was interesting. I had someone I went out to recently. They're in like a 100-year-old house in Minneapolis, which, that might sound old for some people in this country where the housing stock is like, the oldest you get is 1950s, but we got a lot of 1920s and 1900s and stuff like that. And anyways, she was really worried about asbestos and, there's reason to be. It can cause health problems, and as we know, and so she had a boiler that was like 100 years old. It was like original to the house, and it was wrapped in asbestos insulation. And that was the first thing that she had remediated. And the price on getting that system removed from her house has like tripled from what I remember it being back when we were inspecting a few years ago. So that was one thing. And just, it turns out she had vermiculite in her attic that her inspector never found. It was underneath the cellulose. So she was, just so concerned about the removal and the remediation of that asbestos on her boiler pipes and on her boiler. She super cleaned everything in her house after that. And then here I am having to tell her that she does have vermiculite in her attic.
And that's a much bigger concern.
It is. And she had someone recently go up and install a new bath fan in her upstairs bathroom. And so they had been doing work up in the attic and cutting a hole in the ceiling and all that. I didn't want to freak her out about talking about, what effect that could have on indoor air quality if you're having vermiculite, coming in through your ceiling into your living space. But I just, the best thing I can do is just give her the information and, let her do her own research and send her to the website for homeowners that have vermiculite. There's a
Vermiculite Attic Insulation Trust.
Yes, the trust fund that's set up, and let her know about that. And I think she's going to probably have it all remediated, but it's a huge expense, and it's something she wasn't aware of and wasn't planning on. And she's to the point where she's like, I have so much anxiety. I don't even know if I can stay in the house.
Oh my goodness. Oh.
So I think this kind of ties into what we're talking about today, Reuben. I know you wanted to discuss kind of what to report on, what not to report on, what's right and what's wrong. And I don't know if it's that black or white, but I think one thing that I've learned over the years is that it just depends on the homeowner too and the client, like who's buying the house, what are their concerns? And you have to make sure as a home inspector that you are listening to that person and that you understand what their concerns are so that you can give them information that matters to them, because everybody has a different lens of what's important and what's not.
Yes. Oh, that is so important, Tessa. And I mean, it's so important that we started changing our policy around what we do before the inspection. We don't just send out an email asking, do you have any concerns? We actually have our home inspectors reach out to every client before the inspection. We found the best response we get is by texting them.
Yeah.
The inspector
that's
always
amazing.
texts them saying, hey, I'm going to be doing your inspection tomorrow or later today. What big concerns did you have that I can be aware of? And if there's anything, give me a call. We can chat. I mean, just reaching out for that initial contact to figure out what the client is concerned about. What are their hot buttons? And whatever you do, make sure you're writing it down. Maybe you have that conversation. Maybe they have the conversation on site, whatever it is. Make sure it's written down. Make sure that you cover all of it when you're talking with the client, and make sure you put stuff about it in the report.
Yeah.
Like, the client says, okay, I got these cracks in my wood posts on my deck and I'm super concerned about it. And it's on my mind because I'm doing a blog post about it right now. It's actually called checking. It's just about never a concern, but people are concerned about it. And even though it's a nothing item, and I would never take photos and document checking because it's nothing. It just happens to wood. But if my client brought it up as a concern, I would put it in the report. I'd take photos of it and I'd say there was checking on the wood post. This is normal. It happens as the lumber dries out and it's not a concern. I would be proactive about addressing it just to make sure in case they forgot our conversation. Yes, I did see it and it's not an issue. So, I mean, to your point, Tess, so important to address your client's concerns.
Yeah, I mean, you can be the best technical inspector that there is, and you can know everything there is to know about every single part of a house. But unless that client feels heard, they may not have a good experience. True. And so it's all about, I mean, it's about doing a good technical inspection, but it's also about customer satisfaction. And I think you do that by listening to the client, hearing their concerns, and then, as you mentioned, talking about it and probably documenting it too.
Yep. And, some of we don't get a whole lot of complaints, but when we do get complaints, it's typically about not including inconsequential stuff that the client was concerned about. So it's not like it was technically a miss, but we didn't do a good job of listening and addressing our clients' concerns. That leads to complaints. So
yes,
we do our darndest to make sure that we're covering all those bases every single time.
Yeah. So what was the comment that inspired this podcast today, Reuben?
Well, not too long ago, we did, no, it was a while ago where we did a podcast with Mike Casey, and then I kind of lost the podcast and then found it and published it. And during that podcast, I told the story about how one of our inspectors got shocked by some metal ductwork that wasn't properly bonded to the rest of the furnace, and it ended up getting electrified. And Mike Casey said, yeah, technically all that metal ductwork should be bonded. And I'm kind of scratching my head. I'm like, what the heck does a bond look like?
Yeah.
And I don't even remember. I don't know if Mike Casey had an answer for that. He's like, I don't know if I've ever seen it, but or if he had, it would basically be a little wire going around the rubber isolation boot. Well, technically it's not made out of rubber. I don't know what it's made out of. What is that? Vinyl?
I don't know. Yeah.
It's black stuff. And it looks like it could be rubber. And it's this boot. It's a vibration and noise isolation thing that you have above your furnace. So the ductwork, as the furnace vibrates, it doesn't vibrate the rest of the ductwork in your house. And he's saying you should have a jumper that goes over that. I've never seen such a jumper in my life. Yeah. I mean, I've never even seen one in books. Surely there is such a thing, but I don't know what it looks like.
Yeah.
And so Mike is telling me, yeah, it should technically be there. So I had a home inspector reach out after listening to the podcast, and he had we exchanged emails about a couple different things. And one of the questions he said, now that you know about this, are you going to start reporting on it and start recommending correction? And
it's a valid question. Great question.
Great question. And, this is a tough one, Tess, because I'd say 20 years ago, I would have said, yes, absolutely. Mm-hmm. This is important. One of the inspectors on my team got shocked because of it, and it could be a life safety issue, and we're definitely going to report on this and have people fix it.
Mm-hmm. Now, fast forward after years of wisdom and experience, would your answer be the same?
All right, let me take a pause and tell a story. Okay. And my story will answer the question. Back in the day, when I used to spend a lot of time on home inspector forums, I remember we had this long chat for a week or two on this one forum about having current on the water distribution piping. Mm-hmm. Water distribution piping should not carry any current. Now, the electric system is going to be bonded to the water distribution piping. We talked to Mike Casey about that.
We've got metal piping, which we have a lot of here, galvanized or copper, something like that. Yep.
And it's supposed to be bonded. You got this big, thick copper wire that connects to the piping, but there should never be any current on it. And I learned about some home inspectors in different parts of the country who would use their clamp meter. This is an electrical meter where it's got this clamping device, and you can put it around a conductor to figure out how many amps are going through that conductor. And we'll use that when we're doing an infrared inspection on an electric panel. If we see a hot wire and we're like, wait, is that too hot? We'll take this clamp meter and we'll put it around the wire and figure out how many amps are actually going through it. Is it just a little warm, or is it exceeding what it should have on there? Mm-hmm. It's always a good idea to follow up. If you're using an infrared camera on a panel, you should have a clamp meter to figure this out. And so, I had one, and I heard that a lot of home inspectors would actually put this clamp meter on the water piping just to make sure there's no current no amperage
Sure.
detected on the water piping. And they were saying anytime you got that, it's a problem. So I started doing it. And every inspection, I'd put my clamp meter on the water piping and test. I don't think I ever found a single water pipe that didn't have amperage on it. I would always find 1 to 2 amps going through that water piping. And so I'd write it up. Every inspection, I'd write it up.
What would you say?
I said there's a voltage or amperage detected on the water piping. This is not normal and indicates a problem, and it should be further inspected and repaired by an electrician.
I was hoping you'd tell me how to fix it.
Yeah, I don't know how to fix it. And as it turns out, neither do electricians.
That's good. That's good. Rich.
How
many complaints and calls back did you get?
Just about every one. It was a really rough week for me, Tess.
You're only trying to do the right thing, Reuben.
I'm only trying to do the right thing, but then I maybe half a dozen electricians ended up going out to houses, going, I don't know what this guy's talking about. I don't know where he went to school, but I don't know what I'm supposed to do about this. There's not a problem. Everything tests fine. And I'm causing problems that nobody knows how to fix. So at some point, I just said, all right, I'm never putting this device on a water pipe again. I'm causing problems that maybe just don't even exist. It seems, if every house has this, then what's the problem? And I quit doing it. And I've had a number of things like that where I start reporting something. I think it's a good idea. I think this is a problem. I say, hey, this should be fixed. Nobody knows how to fix it. Nobody knows what I'm talking about. And I just look like the most nitpicky person who's inventing stuff. And then real estate agents would accuse me of adding stuff into my report to try to create value when there is no value. And I'm a pain in the ass to work with. And I'm going to call this guy instead.
Yeah.
He doesn't cause these imaginary problems.
Oh, gosh. And I guess there's probably increased anxiety on the homeowners side of things too. They've got one more thing that they're worried about, and they're like, how do I fix this? And they can't find anyone to fix it. So their anxiety levels just increase too.
Yes, exactly. And so what it comes down to for this particular issue is I've never seen it done. I don't know what it looks like. I'm not 100% convinced that it's required. If it is, great. But I don't know anyone who's going to fix it. And so the answer is a solid no. I'm not going to start reporting on this. I think it's probably a wise thing to have done, but no, we're not reporting on it, because in the end, and we talked about this briefly on our phone call, I think about the amount of good that we can do as home inspectors, diligent home inspectors, finding important stuff. We want to deliver the most value we possibly can to our clients. We want to report on important stuff. We want stuff to get fixed. We want the house to be safe. And we do that by doing awesome home inspections. But at some point, you get too much and people aren't going to want to work with you. And when you're not working with anybody, you're not doing any good. You can't help people. And you have to strike a balance with exactly what you report on. You got to figure out what that sweet spot is of delivering the right amount of value, the right amount of information. And, here's another story I'll tell, Tess.
Yeah.
There was when you attach a deck to a house, if you have brick veneer on the outside of the house, you can't attach the deck directly to brick veneer, because brick veneer, and Tessa, you understand this, but for our listeners, brick veneer is going to be basically a freestanding structure that's just kind of clipped into the side of the house. And there's going to be a space between the brick veneer and the sheathing. You'll have a gap between those two, maybe, I don't know, 1/2 inch, 1 inch gap, something like that. They're not going to be touching. Now, if you take a deck and you want to secure it to that brick veneer, well, you start tightening your lag bolts. If you get them tight enough, you're going to start sucking that brick right into the side of the house. So you can't make it too tight. And if you don't make it too tight, the deck ain't properly attached. And for that reason, the building code, it wasn't always clearly spelled out in the code. It was just kind of assumed that people should know not to do this, but now it's actually in the code. It says you cannot attach a deck directly to brick veneer or to any type of veneer like that.
Masonry
You need to make the deck freestanding, or there's even this special device made by Simpson Strong Tie. And I think we've talked about it on the podcast. I have one sitting on my desk here. Simpson sent me one. It's a special device that it basically lets you attach a deck to a house through the brick veneer. And I'm not going to try to explain it on the podcast because it's darn confusing. I will put a link to my blog post about it in this podcast, in the podcast notes. But there is a product to fix it. So, okay, back to my story. I inspect the house, say, hey, deck ain't properly attached. It's going through brick veneer. Fix it. Here's a couple ways to fix it. I got all kinds of kickback because, well, they built it and they got inspected by the city. And what's the problem? And I ended up, I wasn't even the inspector, I don't think, but as the owner, the agent was pissed at me. And he's like, why are you guys making problems that don't exist? I said, look, this really is a problem. You can't do this. And I dug my heels in. And I remember the agent saying, Reuben, at some point, you got to just stop being the smartest person in the room. This isn't helping anybody. And this was not a compliment. He wasn't calling me smart. I just want to make this clear. It's not like he actually thought I was smart. He's saying you're coming up with stuff and nobody knows what the heck you're talking about. And we don't like it. And I haven't heard from him since. We used to do a lot of business together. He would use us for all their transactions. He's a big hitter, but never heard from him again after that conversation. I'll see him at places now and then, and we're friendly, we're nice, but he sure don't call us anymore. And I'm still digging my heels in on that one. We're still going to report that every time. I think it's an important thing. It needs to be fixed, but boy, you got to choose your battles. You got to give people solutions for stuff. And if I don't have a clear solution and the next trade person coming in isn't going to know how to fix it, it ain't going in the report.
Yeah, it is such a challenge. I think I'm sure a lot of the listeners probably have their own stories about situations like that. And it is not black or white on what you report on and how you report on it. I feel like it's a sliding scale. It can even vary from house to house on what you decide to report on as an inspector and what you don't. For instance, 100-year-old house versus a new construction house, you're going to be looking at it with kind of different criteria, different lens on what you're going to report on and what you're not.
Totally.
And so I think part of being a good home inspector is being discerning to look at the house, from that 10,000-foot view, and to understand your client and your homeowner, and to understand what really matters and what doesn't. And to use your own, discernment to figure out what to put in that report and what to comment on.
Yeah. And put it in context. I mean, is this normal? Okay. It's a 100-year-old house and you don't have tempered glass here. Is this normal? Yeah. They didn't have tempered glass. It's totally normal. Is there something you could do to make it a little safer, short of replacing it? Yeah. You could put a film on there. Not that big of a deal. Are you going to do it? Look, none of your neighbors have it either. You got to decide how important this is to you. I'm not going to say this is some life and death issue, but there is an increased risk and maybe you want to do something to make it a little safer. I'm not coming in and say, hey, this was done wrong. If I'm doing a new construction house and you're supposed to have tempered glass here and they don't have it, going to say this was done wrong, and I'm going to recommend you fix it. I would totally have a different lens for it.
And I think even, sharing your wisdom, Reuben, on a platform like this, and, if you're a home inspector out there, just talking with other people in the business and going to conferences and being a part of, discussions online is super helpful for our whole industry, because I can remember back when I started inspecting and I was, learning all these things to look for and these defects and these technicalities. And I didn't want to miss anything. I didn't want to get anything wrong. And I was like recording and reporting on every single thing I saw, and there was a certain pride in that. It's like, oh, see, I didn't miss this. And, your report is like 100 pages long. And now I look back at that, and especially kind of, doing my own consulting now, I look through different home inspection reports from different inspectors, all over the metro area, and review their reports on these clients' homes. And, I can get a report that's 120 pages, and there's maybe 3 pages of information that actually matter.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And a lot of that report is just, I think, people reporting on things to sound smart, or to say, here, I saw this, or here's this. And it's like, okay, does that really matter? And you're giving this document to someone who has no clue. And the stuff that does matter, that is important, is completely lost in the noise of everything else.
Yeah.
And I think that, the more I inspected, the more comfortable I got with things, and the more, experience and context I had, the shorter my reports got, because you're able to, as you said, over the years too, of figuring out what to put in, what not to put in, you learn that over time and through training and keeping an open mind and talking to other people as well. So I think, it's a tough, it's not necessarily like, here's what we report on and everyone else should report on that too. It's like, you have to kind of figure that out for your own, for your own company, for your own geography, your own houses, construction, and your client, what you're going to say and what you're not going to say, and keeping in mind, again, like what really matters, and trying to communicate that as clearly as you can to people.
Yes. And what was your learning curve like first getting into home inspections, knowing all that you know about energy and insulation and building performance?
Yeah.
I mean, I remember you had to dial it way back.
It's interesting you bring that up too. Yeah, that's another good example. Coming from, the energy efficiency world, I would look at the house through that lens, and I would see all the potential issues and hurdles and potential improvements you can do. And again, you're there for a home inspection. That's one tiny piece of the house. There's a lot of other systems.
Yep.
And I learned pretty quickly that I don't want to spend 50% of my time talking to someone about how they could improve the thermal envelope, in their attic, when they have a furnace that's on its last legs and windows that don't operate and electrical issues. It's like, okay, again, let's put it in context. This is something that could be better. They could have air sealing done. They could have more insulation added. We'll put that in the report, but it probably deserves, 5% of my time talking about it, not 50%. Right.
Yeah. And because let's be honest, 5% of the people are even going to deal with it.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. If they've got the budget or they care. Right.
Yeah.
Usually people don't do anything, and they don't put money into these areas of their houses that they don't see and that people don't care about, unless it's causing them pain. Let's be honest. Yep. So I think, that was definitely something that I learned pretty quickly by shadowing all the other inspectors on the team, and even just talking to, the clients I was working with as well.
Yep. That's good.
Yeah.
So, to summarize, listen to client concerns, be sure to address client concerns, make a big deal out of big stuff, little deal out of little stuff, and if you don't know who can fix it or how to fix it, figure that out before you start reporting on it. That's my advice. Don't create a problem and you don't have any type of solution for it.
And also, in your report, it's helpful to say how to fix something. I mean, you don't have to be, let me correct myself. You don't have to spell out exactly how to fix it, but point the client in the right direction of who can fix it and let that expert figure it out. But in your report, don't just leave the client hanging saying, this is a problem. At Structure Tech, you're writing in your reports, this is a problem, this is why it's a problem, and here's what you should do about it. Contact this trade or this type of person to fix it. And there's a lot of inspectors out there that don't do that. And again, it's just, I think you have to help your clients resolve these issues that you're bringing up. I mean, you don't have to, but I think that's good practice.
Yep. Well, good discussion. We touched on all the points I was hoping we could get to today, Tess.
It's going to be a shorter podcast today.
Well, we're at 35 minutes. But Tess, real quick, the shirt you're wearing reminds me, I need to give a shout out to our sponsors, and you're representing well today, Tess. What's the shirt you got?
I'm wearing my IEB t-shirt today.
Love it. IEB, Inspector Empire Builder, sponsors of the show. Awesome folks. I'm a member of IEB. Structure Tech is a member of IEB. They provide, I still don't know how to say it succinctly. It's
go check them out.
Go check them out. Yeah, it's kind of coaching, and it's kind of a peer-to-peer group for home inspectors, whether it's a single person operation or a large team. It's a lot of collaboration, a lot of learning on how to better run your home inspection business.
I think it's a resource too, as we're talking today about these issues that, you've had to experience and sort through and learn from as an owner. If you're out there and you're just getting started inspecting on your own, or you don't have a team of people to learn from around you, it's another opportunity or resource where you can tap into other people who have a lot of wisdom to learn from them.
Yep. You can get in the room with a lot of smart people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Cool. Well, Tess, as always, great to see you.
Good to see you too.
I don't know who our next guest is, but whoever it is, it'll be great. Or maybe it'll just be the two of us. I haven't looked at the calendar yet. But for our listeners, if you got any questions, thoughts, whatever, please reach out to us. podcast@structuretech.com. We'd love to hear from you. And we'll catch you next time. Take care.